Millionaire visits an orphanage for charity and breaks down when a child says the nickname only one person ever knew. Among broken toys and quiet giggles, a 6-year-old girl clutched a tattered teddy bear. She walked up to a bored billionaire and said, "Hi, Uncle Blue." In that moment, time froze, because only one person in his life ever called him that. But what she said next made him collapse right there. Thomas Blue Brennan stepped out of his Bentley and grimaced at the sight of Spokane Children's Haven, another PR obligation. At 42, the tech billionaire had mastered the art of appearing charitable while feeling nothing. His assistant hovered nearby, documenting every moment for social media. "Mr. Brennan, the children are waiting in the recreation room," said the director, Sister Dorothy, her hands clasped at her waist. Thomas nodded curtly. "Let's make this quick." The recreation room was depressingly sparse. Worn furniture, faded walls, toys that had seen better decades. Thomas posed for photos beside a shelf of broken toys, his smile never reaching his eyes. 20 minutes, he whispered to his assistant. "Then we're out." As Thomas moved mechanically through the room, a small figure darted between legs and chairs. A red-haired girl, no older than 6, suddenly appeared at his side and tugged at his sleeve. "Hi, Tio Blue," she said, her green eyes wide and innocent. Thomas froze. The blood drained from his face. That nickname, it couldn't be coincidence. Only one person had ever called him that, Miranda Carter, 20 years ago, his college sweetheart, the woman he'd left behind. "What did you say?" he whispered, crouching down. "Tio Blue," the girl repeated confidently. "Mommy told me to call you that. She said you'd know." Thomas glanced around frantically, expecting cameras, a prank, something to explain this impossible moment. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice unsteady. "Lily," she said, clutching a worn teddy bear with a crooked seam across its belly. "Who's your mother?" Thomas asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. "She's in heaven," Lily said matter-of-factly. "But she said you'd come find me someday." Thomas stood abruptly, nearly stumbling backward. "I need to go," he muttered, gesturing to his assistant. On the flight back to Seattle, Thomas couldn't shake the encounter. His assistant made a crude joke about those charity cases, and Thomas fired him on the spot, the words ice cold. For the first time in years, Thomas opened his old email account, the one he'd shared with Miranda. Nothing after 2003. That night, in his empty penthouse overlooking the Seattle skyline, Thomas's fingers hesitated over his phone. He typed an email to his lawyer. "I need information on a child named Lily at Spokane Children's Haven, discreetly." Sleep eluded him. His mind raced with calculations. 20 years. The timeline fit, but it couldn't be. Could it? He booked a private flight back to Spokane for the following day. No entourage this time. Just him and the question that wouldn't let him rest. Had Miranda given birth to his child? A child he never knew existed? As dawn broke over Seattle, Thomas stared at an old photo he'd kept hidden in his desk drawer. Miranda, laughing by a fountain, her red hair catching the sunlight. He turned the photo over, reading the faded inscription. "To Blue, the only one who sees me. Love always, M." What else hadn't he seen? The University of Washington campus hadn't changed much since 2003. Thomas stood beneath the clock tower, memories washing over him like the autumn rain. This was where he'd met Miranda Carter, brilliant, idealistic, passionate about everything Thomas pretended to care about. "We're going to change the world together," she'd told him, her eyes alight with conviction. Thomas had believed it then, before ambition overshadowed everything else. He slipped into the library where they'd studied together, finding their old corner table. A student sat there now, oblivious to its history. Thomas touched the wooden surface, remembering. Miranda had been a scholarship student, brilliant, but always struggling financially. Thomas, with his family connections and inherited privilege, had been her opposite in so many ways. Yet for 2 years, they'd been inseparable, until Boston, until the internship that promised to fast-track his career. "I just don't see a future for us," he'd told her over the phone, pacing his new apartment. "I can't be tied down right now." Her silence had been worse than anger. "Miranda, say something," he'd demanded. "There's nothing left to say," she'd whispered, and hung up. She'd called a week later. He'd seen her name on the screen and let it go to voicemail. Her message was brief. "I just wanted to tell you something important, but I guess it doesn't matter anymore." He'd deleted it without a second thought. Back in his hotel room in Spokane, Thomas searched online for any trace of Miranda. It took hours, but finally he found it. A simple obituary from 2005. Miranda Carter, 27, passed away following complications during childbirth. A graduate of the University of Washington, Miranda was known for her kindness and dedication to others. Memorial donations may be made to Spokane Children's Haven. Thomas stared at the screen, the words blurring through tears. He hadn't cried in decades. Miranda had died in childbirth, 2 years after he'd left her. The next morning he returned to the orphanage, asking specifically to speak with Sister Dorothy. The older woman regarded him warily. "Mr. Brennan, I didn't expect to see you again so soon." "I need to know about Lily," he said without preamble. "And about her mother." Sister Dorothy studied him carefully. "Follow me." In her modest office, she showed him a file. Miranda arrived at the hospital alone, in labor. There were complications. She knew she wouldn't make it. The nun's voice was gentle but direct. She gave the baby to a nurse, with only a few instructions. The child stayed with Miranda's mother until she passed away 5 years ago. Then Lily came to us. "What instructions?" Thomas asked, his throat tight. "That the child should be named Lily, and that when she was old enough to understand, she should be told to call her father T.O. Blue." Miranda said, "When he grows up, he'll understand the name I chose for her to use." Thomas flinched at the words. She was talking about me. "Are you saying you're Lily's father, Mr. Brennan?" He stared out the window. "I don't know, but I need to find out." Sister Dorothy closed the file. "Lily has one possession from her mother, that teddy bear. She never lets it out of her sight." Thomas thought of the bear with its strange seam. "Can I speak with her, please?" As Sister Dorothy led him through the hallway, she paused. "Mr. Brennan, that child has lost everyone she's ever loved. If you're planning to walk into her life only to walk back out, don't. She deserves better." Before Thomas could respond, a small voice called out from behind them. "You came back," Lily said, clutching her teddy bear. "I told them you would." The room was small but clean, decorated with children's drawings and a few worn books. Lily sat cross-legged on a chair too big for her, the teddy bear resting in her lap. Thomas sat across from her, acutely aware of Sister Dorothy watching from the doorway. "Why did you call me T.O. Blue?" Thomas asked gently. Lily ran her fingers over the bear's crooked seam. "Mommy taught me before she went to heaven. She said you'd know who I am when I say it." Thomas glanced at the bear. "That's a special teddy bear." Lily nodded solemnly. "His name is Guardian. Mommy made him keep her secrets safe." Thomas leaned forward. "What kind of secrets?" "I'm not supposed to tell," Lily whispered. "But—" She looked up at him with trusting eyes that mirrored his own. "Maybe Guardian was waiting for you too." Sister Dorothy stepped forward. "Lily, would it be okay if Mr. Brennan borrowed Guardian for a little while? He'd take very good care of him." Lily clutched the bear tighter. "You promised to bring him back?" Thomas nodded, an unexpected lump in his throat. "I promise." After a moment's hesitation, Lily handed over the bear. "He gets scared at night," she warned. Back in his hotel room, Thomas examined the teddy bear carefully. The seam across its belly was clearly done by hand, unlike the factory stitching on the rest of the toy. With trembling fingers, he found a small pocket knife and carefully cut along the crude stitches. Inside was a tiny metal box, no bigger than a matchbox. Thomas opened it with shaking hands. Within lay a college ring, his college ring, the one he'd given Miranda on their first anniversary. Beside it was a piece of paper, water-damaged and mostly illegible. But at the bottom, stuck to the metal with old tape, was a small note in Miranda's handwriting. "If he ever returns, tell him the name he left behind." Thomas sank to his knees, the box clutched in his hands. Memories flooded back. Miranda laughing as she called him Blue for the first time, teasing him about his eyes. The nickname that became their private language, that no one else had ever used. He'd left more than a girlfriend behind. He'd left a daughter. Thomas reached for his phone and texted his lawyer. "Find out everything about Lily, but be careful. Don't scare her." Later that night, as Thomas lay awake, his phone buzzed with a response. "There's a situation. A maternal aunt has suddenly appeared, claiming custody rights. Demands to meet with you tomorrow. Seems suspicious." Thomas stared at the ceiling, the tiny box still in his hand. After 20 years of running from commitment, from connection, from anything that might slow his ascent, the past had found him anyway. And now, someone else wanted to take Lily away. Dawn found Thomas still awake, the bear restored with a careful stitch. He'd made his decision. For once in his life, he wouldn't run away. He didn't know how to be a father. He barely remembered how to be human. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. No one would hurt Lily again. He had no idea that within 24 hours his face would be splashed across every newspaper in the country, his secret exposed to the world, or that the bear and its contents would become Exhibit A in a custody battle that would change all their lives forever. The woman across the table bore little resemblance to Miranda. Her eyes were cold, her posture rigid with practiced indignation. She'd introduced herself as Catherine Carter, Miranda's older sister, though Thomas had never heard Miranda mention her. "I've been searching for my niece for years," Catherine said, her voice honeyed with false sincerity. "Imagine my surprise when I finally locate her, only to discover Thomas Brennan has suddenly taken an interest in the child he abandoned." Thomas remained silent, studying her. "Let's handle this like adults," Catherine continued, sliding a document across the table. "I'm willing to be reasonable about visitation rights for the right arrangement." "You want money?" Thomas said flatly. Catherine's smile tightened. "I want what's best for Lily, and what's best is that her family scandal doesn't become front-page news. Your company's stock wouldn't survive it. You've never been part of Lily's life." "And you have," Catherine laughed. "Here's what happens next. Either we come to a private agreement that acknowledges my rights as Lily's only blood relative, or tomorrow's headlines read, 'Billionaire abandoned pregnant girlfriend discovers orphaned daughter decades later.'" Thomas pushed the document back. "No." Catherine's facade cracked. "Nobody will believe you suddenly care about a child you never knew existed. They'll see a guilty rich man trying to save face. Get out." She gathered her papers with deliberate slowness. "You'll regret this. Nobody wants to hear that the great Thomas Brennan rejected his own daughter twice." After she left, Thomas discovered that Lily had been listening from the hallway. The next morning, she disappeared from the orphanage. Hours of frantic searching ended when a police officer found her in a park 3 miles away, her clothes dirty, her bear clutched tightly to her chest. "I was looking for my mom," she explained through tears. "I thought maybe she wasn't really in heaven." Thomas knelt beside her on the rain-soaked grass. "Lily, I'm so sorry." She looked up at him, her face streaked with mud and tears. "Are you really my dad? Is that why the mean lady was yelling?" Thomas swallowed hard. "I think I am. I didn't know about you before, but I'm here now, and I promise you, you're important to me. I'm going to do what I should have done a long time ago." That afternoon, Catherine filed for emergency custody and financial compensation. By nightfall, the story had leaked to the press. Tech billionaire's secret child discovered in orphanage. Thomas withdrew from public view, instructing his legal team to focus on one thing only: protecting Lily. His company's board called an emergency meeting, demanding he address the scandal. Thomas resigned as CEO via email, his mind elsewhere. The judge scheduled a preliminary hearing where Lily would be required to testify. Sister Dorothy warned him that the process would be traumatic for the child. "She's already lost so much," she said. "Whatever happens in that courtroom will stay with her forever." That night, as Thomas prepared for the hearing, his phone rang with an unlisted number. When he answered, the voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but the message clear. Someone had evidence about Miranda's final days, evidence that could change everything. "Meet me tomorrow at 8 a.m. behind the courthouse," the caller said. "Come alone, and Mr. Brennan, better decide now what kind of father you want to be, because after tomorrow the whole world will be watching." Thomas stared at the phone long after the call ended. Tomorrow would determine not just Lily's future, but his own soul. The courthouse steps swarmed with reporters. Thomas arrived through a back entrance at 7:45 a.m., his heart pounding with each step. In the shadowed parking lot, a woman in scrubs waited. "I was the nurse on duty that night," she said without preamble, "when Miranda Carter died." Thomas felt the world tilt. "You called me?" She nodded. "I promised her I'd watch over the child. I've been keeping tabs on Lily since she went to the orphanage." She handed him an envelope. "Miranda wrote this the night she died. I was supposed to give it to you if you ever came looking for your daughter." D. Inside was a letter in Miranda's handwriting, the ink faded but legible. "Blue. If you're reading this, you finally found her. Don't waste time with regrets. Just love her better than you loved me." By the time Thomas entered the courtroom, his hands had stopped shaking. Catherine sat at one table with her attorney, the picture of wounded dignity in an expensive suit. Thomas took his place at the opposite table, alone. He'd dismissed his lawyers that morning. The judge, a severe woman in her 60s, reviewed the case file. "Ms. Carter, you're seeking full custody of your niece, Lily Carter, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor. She belongs with family." "And Mr. Brennan, you're contesting this because you believe you're the child's biological father?" "I know I am, Your Honor." The judge looked skeptical. "Yet you had no contact with the child for 6 years." "I didn't know she existed," Thomas said simply. "Miranda never told me she was pregnant." Catherine's attorney interjected. "Convenient claim, Your Honor. Mr. Brennan abandoned Ms. Carter when their relationship became inconvenient. Now he's doing damage control." The judge turned to Thomas. "What do you have to say in your defense, Mr. Brennan?" Thomas stood, unfolding a handwritten note. "I was a coward 20 years ago. I left because I was afraid of commitment, of distraction, of anything that might slow me down. I don't deserve to be Lily's father." His voice broke. "But I want to learn how to be." Catherine smirked, victorious. Then the judge called Lily to the stand. A hush fell over the courtroom as the small red-haired girl walked forward, clutching her bear. The judge spoke gently. "Lily, do you understand why you're here today?" Lily nodded. "They're deciding who gets to take me home." "That's right. And I need to know how you feel about that. Do you know these people?" She gestured to Catherine and Thomas. Lily pointed at Catherine. She came to the orphanage. She said she was my aunt, but she called me a burden when she thought I couldn't hear. Catherine's face flushed. That's not... The judge silenced her with a look, then turned back to Lily. And what about Mr. Brennan? Lily looked at Thomas, her expression solemn. The aunt calls me a problem, but Blue calls me Lily. A tear slid down Thomas's cheek. The judge studied them both, then made her decision. Temporary joint custody with primary residence with Thomas and supervised visits with Catherine, pending further evaluation. As they left the courtroom, Lily slipped her hand into Thomas's. "Are you really my dad?" she asked in the car. Thomas took a deep breath. "Not yet," he said honestly, "but I want to learn how to be." They stopped at a diner on the way back to the hotel. As Thomas ordered pancakes, Lily drew on a napkin with crayons provided by the waitress. When she finished, she pushed it across the table. It showed two stick figures holding hands. Below, she'd written in careful letters, "Blue and Lily, Day 1. Thomas folded the napkin and placed it in his wallet without a word. That night, watching Lily sleep on the hotel room's pull-out couch, Thomas made a silent promise to Miranda. He would be worthy of the daughter she'd given him, the daughter he never knew he needed until she called him by the name only love had ever used. He had no idea then that keeping that promise would cost him everything he'd spent his life building, or that it would be worth every penny. 1 year later, Lily stood in the doorway of her bedroom, watching Thomas struggle with a paint roller. Sky blue paint dripped onto the drop cloth, covering the hardwood floor of their Seattle home. "You missed a spot," she pointed out, giggling. Thomas wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of blue. "Interior decoration isn't listed among my skills on LinkedIn." "What's LinkedIn?" "Something that used to matter to me," Thomas replied, dipping the roller again. Life had transformed for both of them in the 12 months since the custody hearing. Catherine had eventually dropped her claim after journalists uncovered her history of financial schemes. Thomas had stepped down permanently as CEO of his company, though he remained on the board. Most significantly, after months of DNA tests and court appearances, he had been granted full legal custody of Lily. The transition hadn't been easy. Thomas had hired child psychologists, read parenting books, and renovated his sleek bachelor penthouse into a home suitable for a 7-year-old. Lily had nightmares, adjustment issues, moments of grief for her mother and the grandmother she barely remembered. But they were figuring it out together. "Why blue?" Lily asked, watching the wall transform. Thomas smiled. "It reminds me of something important." While Lily was at her new school that morning, Thomas had discovered a notebook under her pillow during his weekly room cleaning, a habit the therapist had suggested to provide stability. He hadn't meant to read it, but a page had fallen open, revealing a letter in Lily's uneven handwriting. "Dear Dad, I'm practicing calling you that in my head. If you go away too, please tell me with a kiss goodbye, like Mom did before heaven. Don't just disappear. Love, Lily." The words had pierced Thomas's heart. That afternoon, he'd purchased paint on his way to pick her up from school. Later that evening, with the paint dry and Lily's room reassembled, they sat on her new window seat overlooking the garden. "I want to show you something," Thomas said, taking out his phone. He pulled up photos of the University of Washington campus. "This is where I met your mom." Lily leaned closer. "Was she pretty?" "Beautiful. And smart. Much smarter than me." He swiped through pictures of buildings and pathways. "This was the coffee shop where we had our first date. This bench is where we used to study together." Lily took in each image silently, her face serious. As they drove back from dinner that night, Lily suddenly asked, "Do you regret me?" Thomas pulled the car over, turning to face her fully. "Lily, listen to me. I regret every day I missed with you. I regret not being there when you were born, when you spoke your first word, when you learned to walk. But I have never, not for 1 second, regretted you. But you left Mom. I did. I was young and selfish and scared. I made the biggest mistake of my life that day. If I could go back and change it, I would. But then I wouldn't be who I am now, someone who finally understands what matters. That night, Lily fell asleep with her head on Thomas's lap while they watched a movie. The teddy bear, guardian, sat on her bookshelf, no longer needed for immediate comfort. Thomas carried her to bed, tucking her in gently. As he turned to leave, his phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender's name stopped him cold. David Miller, Miranda's college roommate. The subject line read, "For you, if she ever finds you." Thomas's hand trembled as he opened it, wondering what ghost from the past had returned to haunt him now and how it would change the fragile peace he and Lily had built together. Thomas sat on his balcony, the glow of his phone illuminating his face in the darkness. David Miller's email contained a single attachment, a draft Miranda had written but never sent, dated 3 months after Thomas had left for Boston. "Blue, I've started this email 100 times. I don't know if you'll ever read it. Part of me hopes you won't. That would mean I found the courage to tell you in person, or the wisdom to let you go completely. I'm pregnant, almost 4 months now. It's yours, of course. There's never been anyone else. I won't ask you to come back. I watched you leave, remember, the relief in your eyes when you finally broke free. I won't be the anchor that drags you down from the heights you're determined to reach. But this child deserves to know their father someday. Not the boy who ran away, but the man you might become, the one who could look back and see what was real. If she finds you, I keep dreaming it's a girl, don't waste time with apologies. Just be better than you were. M. Thomas read it 7 times before setting the phone down. He sat motionless, watching the Seattle skyline blur through tears. The following morning, over breakfast, Lily mentioned something that had been bothering her. "Everyone at school has their mum's name in their name. I only have Carter." Thomas set down his coffee. "Would you like to have my name too?" Lily nodded, pushing her cereal around the bowl. "Can I still keep Mom's?" That afternoon, Thomas took Lily to the county clerk's office. By the end of the day, her legal name was Lily Carter Brennan. As they walked back to the car, Lily skipped ahead, then turned suddenly. "Does this mean you're really my dad now? For real?" "I've always been your dad," Thomas said. "The paper just helps everyone else know it too." The next day, Thomas surprised Lily by showing up at her school presentation. He'd cancelled a board meeting to be there, something the old Thomas would never have done. From the back of the classroom, he watched as Lily stepped to the front, clutching a paper in her small hands. Her hair, so like Miranda's, had been carefully braided that morning, Thomas's 3rd attempt. "My poem is called Colors Have Names," she announced to the class. "Red is for hearts that beat and sometimes break. Yellow is for the sun that comes back every day. Green is for growing things that change. Blue is a color, but also someone who came back." Thomas felt the room fade around him as Lily's words washed over him. When she finished, the teacher called his name, inviting him to come forward with the other parents. He hesitated, not wanting to intrude on Lily's moment, but Lily spotted him and ran down the aisle, grabbing his hand. "Come on," she whispered, tugging him forward. As they reached the front, she squeezed his hand and murmured, "You're already my dad, but now everyone else needs to know too." That evening, a courier delivered a large envelope to their home. Inside was a court document. Catherine had filed an appeal, claiming new evidence about Thomas's fitness as a parent. As Thomas read through the allegations, falsehoods about his character, his company, his relationship with Lily, his phone rang. It was his former assistant, the one he'd fired on the plane. "You should know," the man said without greeting. "She offered me 6 figures for dirt on you. I told her to go to hell." Thomas thanked him and hung up. When he looked up, Lily stood in the doorway, Guardian clutched to her chest for the first time in months. "Is the mean lady coming back?" she asked, her voice small. Thomas crossed the room and knelt before her. "She might try. But I promise you, Lily Carter Brennan, no one is taking you away from me. Not ever." As Lily drifted to sleep that night, Thomas made a decision. It was time to confront the past once and for all, not just for his sake, but for Lily's. And it would begin with a bear that had guarded secrets for far too long. "Are you sure about this?" Thomas asked, as Lily placed Guardian into a donation box at the children's shelter. "He kept secrets safe for me," Lily said, smoothing the bear's worn fur one last time. "Now he can help someone else." They'd come to donate supplies to Sister Dorothy's orphanage, Lily's idea for her give-back birthday, as she called it. At 8 years old, she'd insisted on donations instead of presents. Thomas watched his daughter with a mixture of pride and amazement. How had someone so small taught him so much about generosity? 3 days later, Thomas spotted Guardian again, in the most unlikely of places. They were at an adoption fair in a Seattle park, handing out information about foster care. There, on a bench, sat an elderly man holding the teddy bear, tears streaming unchecked down his weathered face. Thomas approached cautiously. "Excuse me, sir, that bear—" The man looked up, startled. He wore a faded beret and clothes that had seen better years. "I'm sorry, is it yours?" he asked in a trembling voice. "It was my daughter's. She donated it recently." Recognition dawned in the old man's eyes. "You're him, aren't you? Thomas Brennan." Thomas tensed. "Have we met?" "Not formally, but I used to watch you and Miranda sitting by the fountain on campus. I was the groundskeeper, kept that garden for 30 years. His gnarled fingers stroked the bear's head. "Miranda would bring me coffee sometimes. Even after you left, she'd stop and talk. Got bigger and bigger with the baby, but never lost that smile." Thomas sat down beside him, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "I didn't know. She never spoke ill of you, just said you had different paths." The old man clutched the bear tighter. "When I saw this at the shelter, with that special stitching she used to do, I knew it was hers. Couldn't believe it was being given away." Lily skipped over, stopping short when she saw Guardian. "You found him?" The old man smiled through his tears. "This little girl, she has Miranda's light." "Would you like to join us for lunch?" Thomas asked impulsively. "I'd love to hear more about Miranda." The groundskeeper shook his head. "I've said what needed saying." He tried to hand the bear back to Lily, but she pushed it gently toward him. "Guardian wants to stay with you," she said decisively. "He likes helping people remember." As they walked away, Thomas offered financial assistance, but the old man refused. "Already got everything I need today," he insisted. Back home that evening, Thomas found an unmarked envelope on their doorstep. Inside were photographs he'd never seen before. Miranda, heavily pregnant, smiling in a hospital room. Another of her holding a newborn Lily, exhaustion and joy mingling on her face. And barely visible in the background, draped over a chair, a blue jacket. His blue jacket, the one he'd left behind when he moved. Thomas recognized the handwriting on the back of the photos. The same nurse who'd given him Miranda's letter. She'd been there all along, keeping her promise to a dying mother. "Dad?" Lily called, peering over his shoulder. "Is that Mum?" Thomas nodded, unable to speak. "She's got my hair," Lily observed. "And look, your jacket's there. So you were kind of there when I was born." Thomas stared at the photo, a realization dawning. He hadn't been entirely absent from Lily's beginnings. A piece of him had been watching over her from the start, just like Miranda had always been watching over them both. "Let's frame these," he said, finding his voice at last, "so we can see Mom every day." That night, Thomas sat at his desk, writing a letter of his own. To Miranda, to the past, to himself. Words he'd never said, apologies never offered, gratitude never expressed. When he finished, he placed it inside Guardian's empty hiding place in Lily's room, a secret answered with a secret. Some words weren't meant to be read, only felt. He had no idea then that in the morning, the most extraordinary gift would be waiting. One that Miranda had prepared 20 years ago, a final message from beyond that would complete their circle at last. Thomas couldn't sleep. After finding the photographs, his mind kept returning to the blue jacket in the background. He'd forgotten he'd left it at Miranda's apartment that final spring. Restless, he went to his office and opened the box of Miranda's personal effects that the nurse had given him months ago. Most were small mementos, movie ticket stubs, a pressed flower, notes they'd passed in class. But something he hadn't noticed before caught his eye. A receipt from Melody's music box, dated 1 week after their last phone call. The next morning, as Lily ate breakfast, Thomas asked, "How would you feel about a little detective work today?" Her eyes lit up. Like in the mystery books? Melody's music box had moved locations 3 times in 20 years, but remained in business. The current shop was in a renovated Victorian house on the outskirts of Seattle, specializing in antique musical instruments and collectibles. The owner, a woman in her 70s, looked skeptical when Thomas explained his quest. "You think we kept something for 20 years? It would have been purchased by Miranda Carter, a musical item, possibly personalized." The woman's expression softened. Miranda Carter? Red hair, freckles, laugh that could light up a room? Thomas nodded, stunned. "I remember her. Came in looking for something special, said it was for the father of her baby, a surprise, picked out a musical keychain, had it engraved even though she was on a tight budget." The owner disappeared into a back room, returning minutes later with a small box. "She never came back for it. I couldn't bring myself to resell it, not after I heard what happened to her." Thomas opened the box with trembling hands. Inside lay a sterling silver keychain in the shape of a musical note. When he pressed the small button on its side, a gentle piano melody played, the same song that had been their song in college. Engraved on the back was a single word: blue. She said it was supposed to be a gift for when she told him about the baby," the shop owner explained. "She was so excited, poor thing." That evening, Thomas placed the keychain in Lily's hand without explanation. She examined it curiously, then pressed the button. As the melody played, her eyes filled with tears. "I know this song," she whispered. "It was in my dream last night." Thomas felt goosebumps rise on his arms. "What dream?" "Mom was singing it to me. She said to listen carefully because it was important." Thomas swallowed hard. "Do you think your mom still talks to you sometimes?" Lily considered this seriously. "I think she talks to you first," she said finally, "and then you bring her messages to me." That night, as Thomas tucked Lily into bed, she asked suddenly, "What am I to you?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean? Am I just your daughter? Or something else too?" Thomas sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "You're my daughter, but you're also the present your mother couldn't finish wrapping." Lily smiled, satisfied with this answer, and drifted off to sleep. As Thomas closed her door, his phone rang. The lawyer. Catherine had withdrawn her appeal and signed away all parental claims in exchange for a substantial settlement. Lily was officially, irrevocably his. For the first time since finding Lily, Thomas felt truly complete. The keychain in his pocket, the music in his ears, the knowledge that Miranda had forgiven him long before he'd forgiven himself. It all washed over him in a wave of peace. The next morning, as Thomas made pancakes, a skill he'd finally mastered after dozens of burned attempts, Lily sat at the kitchen counter drawing. "What would you think about a birthday party this year?" Thomas asked casually. With friends from school. Lily looked up surprised. A real party? Not just us. A real party. Cake, decorations, the works. She considered this seriously. Can I invite Sister Dorothy? And maybe that old man with Guardian? Thomas smiled. Absolutely. That evening, as Lily slept, Thomas sat in his study staring at the musical keychain. It represented everything he'd almost lost. Love, family, purpose. 20 years ago, he'd chosen ambition over connection. Now, holding this gift Miranda had chosen in her final months, he understood just how blind he'd been. You found a way to reach me anyway, didn't you? He whispered to the empty room. He placed the keychain beside the framed napkin drawing from their first day together. Blue and Lily, day one. Side by side, they told the story of a journey neither he nor Miranda could have imagined, but somehow, across time and loss, had brought their daughter home. Lily's 12th birthday dawned bright and clear. Thomas had transformed their backyard into a wonderland of flowers and twinkling lights. A modest table held a homemade cake, Thomas's third attempt that morning. Guests began arriving at noon. Schoolmates, teachers, Sister Dorothy, even the elderly groundskeeper who still carried Guardian in his coat pocket. The children played games while the adults watched from the patio, sharing stories of Lily's journey. One chair remained conspicuously empty, adorned with a single red rose. That's Mum's chair, Lily explained to anyone who asked. She's always invited. As the sun began to set, Thomas clinked his glass for attention. The gathered guests fell silent. 6 years ago, he began, I knew nothing about being a father. I barely knew how to be a person. Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. Then a little girl called me by a name I thought I'd never hear again, and everything changed. He looked at Lily, standing tall and confident among her friends. Not all gifts arrive when we expect them. Some come late, but they change everything. After the last guest departed, Lily handed Thomas an envelope. Now it's your turn to read something that was never sent. Inside, Thomas found a printout of Miranda's final email, the one David had forwarded months ago. Lily had found it on his computer. You read this? Thomas asked, stunned. Lily nodded. Last week. I was looking for the homework you printed for me. Thomas sat heavily on the sofa. I'm sorry, I should have shown it to you. Would you have stayed? Lily asked suddenly. If you'd known about me back then. Thomas considered lying, offering the comforting fiction she might want to hear, but they'd built their relationship on truth, however difficult. No, he said finally. I would have run even faster. I wasn't ready to be anyone's father then. He reached for her hand. But now I'd stay, even if the whole world told me to leave. Lily smiled, surprising him with a fierce hug. That's what I thought. Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Thomas went to check on her one last time. As he adjusted her blanket, something caught his eye on her bookshelf. Guardian the bear sat upright against her books. How did you? Thomas whispered, reaching for the toy. The groundskeeper must have returned it somehow. As he lifted the bear, he noticed the stitching across its belly was different, neater, more careful. He gently felt inside the small opening and discovered a new secret, a small handwritten note in Lily's careful script. Dear Mom, I found him. Or maybe you sent him to find me. Either way, thank you. Love, Lily. Thomas carefully replaced the bear and backed out of the room, tears streaming down his face. In the hallway, he paused at a collection of photographs that now lined the wall. Miranda holding newborn Lily, Thomas and Lily at the courthouse on adoption day, the three of them in spirit, if not in person. She has your heart, he whispered to Miranda's smiling image, and your stubbornness. Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, washing Seattle clean once more. Thomas opened a window, letting the cool night air fill the home they'd built together, not the family he'd planned, but the one he'd been given, the one that had saved him from himself. In Lily's room, the bear sat sentinel in the moonlight, keeper of secrets past and present, guardian of a love that had found its way home at last. Sometimes a single word, one nickname, can carry the weight of a lifetime of regret and love. Thomas never imagined that what he once ignored could return through the voice of a child he didn't even know existed. But life has its mysterious ways of offering second chances, and when they come, it's not with fireworks, but with whispers, old teddy bears, and quiet hugs. This story reminds us that it's never too late to face what we once ran from, and that love, when chosen in the present, can heal what was broken in the past. What about you? Have you ever heard something so simple, yet it changed everything? What did this story make you feel? If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell, hit the like button, and leave a comment telling us which country or city you're watching from. Knowing that helps us create even better stories for you. And don't forget, another beautiful story is waiting for you in the next video. Just click on the card that appears on your screen. Thank you so much for being here.